Hey, this is OG Banks. You are watching and listening to Voice of the Heroes. I play Omoe on Naruto, and I also play Muhammad Ali Jr. on Baki Baby.
What's good, everybody? It's the one and only one, Fleeboy Jetson. And today I have my co-host with me. Like, comment, and subscribe, and click that notification bell so you can be updated on all the new interviews and discussions with your favorite heroes and villains from around the world. You're watching the #1 anime podcast, Voice of the Heroes, and today we got a very special guest. He is, my God, so many characters in the gaming universe. He is Sideswipe from Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. He
Damn, I'm
is
good.
King Bumi from Avatar, the original
Hello.
Avatar. And he is André Sogliuzzo. Your
Hello.
catalog,
Good to
my
be here,
God,
guys.
welcome to the channel first and foremost. Your
Thank you.
catalog of characters is insane. Truly shows the range and versatility of your work. How do you create these unique voices for so many characters and still have room for more?
Oh, there's always room for more. The world's full of all kinds of people. And that's a broader question. How do you create a voice for these characters? It depends. Like, you generally go off what's on the page. Hopefully they send you a spec. They tell you, okay, he's this old, he's from this part of the country. Oh, I want, or if he's British, he's kind of sounds like this guy, or he's from this region. So it's like, who are you? Where are you from? They give you a psychological background. They'll say, oh, he's got a kind of gravelly voice, or he does, or he doesn't. So it just depends, and you slowly build on all the little clues they give you. Sometimes you get art with that description, and then from the art, I just look at that guy and imagine what he sounds like, and I build on that. But I've been a student of the way people talk since pretty much I could talk. As a little kid, that's what I did. So,
So it was more of a gift.
yeah, I guess it was a gift. I also have said many times before in another way, it was my father was a theater professor, but he was a wonderful teacher, but bad politician. He was always chasing tenure. If you know what tenure is, that's when you have a job for life at a university. And that's very political. And like all things political, that can get ugly. And he was just he just loved teaching. He wasn't great at politics. So we were always kind of moving around. I was kind of like an army brat. So I was born in Manhattan, but then I moved to upstate New York. Then I was then we moved to Italy. Then I lived in Texas. So I moved from Rome, Italy to Dallas, Texas, right? I spent some summers in Michigan. Then I lived in California as a teenager for high school. Then I moved back to New York, and New York is a melting pot of a million accents. So everywhere I moved, people talk differently. Also, even before I moved to Europe, I had my 6th birthday in London, so I went to Scotland when I was like 6, 8 years old. And, that was English. Like, I was like, I couldn't even understand back then because, again, it was a different world. There was a lot less television. So you would hear a British accent on what was called Masterpiece Theater on the public television. But, or maybe I'd meet an English person because there were a lot of British professors and stuff. And so the way people speak represents where they're from and their culture. But when you're the new kid perpetually, you want to fit in as quick as you can. So I wasn't faking it, but you just slowly, you move south and suddenly you just slip the word y'all going or not, like it just happens, so wherever I lived, you didn't want to stand out too much. So my voice now sounds, I mean, maybe my attitude is New York, but my voice is kind of neutral. You don't really know where I'm from if you meet me. But yeah, I'm a New Yorker through and through, but I've been in LA a long time. But yeah, so wherever I went, I was imitating. A lot of people say, oh, you make fun of the way other people speak. But for me, it wasn't that. In another way, it was a way of understanding them. If you understand how someone speaks, you understand how they behave, how they move. Everything is, so I was always a very sound and voice oriented kid. And I was always doing impressions real early, like from the age of 6, I was imitating.
And I could kind of relate to that because I'm from the Bronx, New York. So when I moved
All right, my
down
man.
south,
My dad's from Arthur Avenue, born on Arthur Avenue. Yo. Yeah.
Okay,
So we're
talk
like New
about it.
York Italian people talking like,
Yeah,
but
so when you're in New York, you're around, like you said, a lot of different people. You know, you got Spanish people, black people,
oh
white people,
yeah.
all in the same neighborhood, Chinese people. And then when you move down south, it's not as diverse as New York is with cultures,
Yeah.
but the language down there, the way people talk is completely different. So yeah, I can get exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and especially when I was a kid, it was much more. Even now, in Manhattan, especially, is more watered down. But when I was a little kid on the Upper West Side, it was a Puerto Rican neighborhood still. It was hardware stores and Puerto Ricans where I lived. Like 94th, 91st between Amsterdam and Columbus is where I was born. And I was born in a hospital in Harlem, but I lived on the Upper West Side. But yeah, when I was a little kid, it was very clear. You had black people, you had Puerto Rican people, and they were all on top of each other. You know what I mean? So all
Mm.
those cultures were melting together. So those cultural differences were just kind of right up in your face, and so I was exposed very early to that kind of diversity, and my parents were real New York liberal teacher types, so yeah, we had all kinds of friends, gay friends, black friends, didn't matter, and so yeah, we weren't as segregated as some people might have been in other neighborhoods. So yeah, that was just a wonderful exposure for me early, very young age.
So what was you doing before acting, and what inspired you to be an actor?
As I said, my dad was a theater professor, so I grew up in academic theater early. I mean, the first thing I ever
Mm.
did on stage, I was probably like 4 or 5 years old. Um, at the university in a show, in a play. I think I was in Peter Pan. I was one of the Lost Boys when I was really little. So I was always around the process of acting, not in the Hollywood kid, Disney brat, like professional kid. I was around just theater as a concept, as an idea, as a process. I was always with my dad in the summers, and he would be directing plays, also teaching. So, I was there from like the first read to the final curtain at a very young age. So the whole process of acting or disappearing or make believe on a stage was just something I was exposed to. So I kind of always wanted to be an actor, but I never quite admitted it to myself. I also wanted to be Jacques Cousteau because I want to be an oceanographer as a kid. But then once I got into high school, I realized I had absolutely no aptitude for math, and an oceanographer really was a mathematician of sorts. So that dream went away quickly. But yeah, so I was always around acting, but not as a business. That was a whole other side of things. But um,
Mhm.
yeah, so I wasn't afraid of the stage or of being in front of an audience. And, I learned very early how to sort of perform, or, that whole thing was kind of in a way second nature to me. So that kind of just that exposure made me want to do it. And then as a later, when I was a young teenager, which goes to other stuff too, uh, my dad taught grad students. So these were actors in their 20s, you know?
Mm.
And so I being at university, like, even as little kids, they were grad students. But, once I was a teenager, a lot of my close friends were already sort of actors, so, um, and one of the early stories I have, which is interesting. There's a very famous arts festival called the Edinburgh, Scotland, the Edinburgh Festival. And my dad worked with the Edinburgh Festival. So as I said, I was there when I was like 6 years old the first time, and there was this incredible play called Tamerlane, and by Marlowe, and this production I saw was just wild and violent and bloody and swords, and this was like, ancient history, but this was like late 60s, early 70s. They were doing all kinds of experimental theaters, like 1972. So stage back then wasn't necessarily like like you didn't stab somebody and blood exploded out of them, but these guys were going for it, right? It was hardcore. And so I spent like the week or the couple days before just hanging out with the actors in costume and watching them sword fight and rehearse. And then I was helping make these little blood packs that were then taped to them. So on stage, they get in a fight and one guy would stab the other one. This thing would and they were all wearing like white shirts. So they'd hit that blood pack and it was go bam, it was like, and when you're 6 years old, 7, that's just badass. So, but what was funny is opening night. So we go to opening night of the show, and all these guys that were my friends now. So I thought, all these British actors, all these young British guys. Right when the show was about to start, I had to go to the bathroom really bad. And it was a different world. Back then, your parents would let you just run off to the bathroom on your own at 6 years old in a building, no one had to walk you there, right? So I got up in this old theater to like run up the aisle. And right when I was going to the bathroom, the way this show started is the doors open and all these guys in full like armor come with these spears. And they're like, I'm running up the aisle, and suddenly one of my friends has got the scariest face they ever seen, and he's got this spear coming at me. And I was like, like I immediately like ran back to my seat and just held it, and I was like almost even though the reality of what they were doing, I understood, the fantasy of it terrified me because you're still 6 years old. You know what I mean? Even though I knew it was a fake blood pack, seeing it with lights and costumes in the moment, I thought it was real, like,
Yeah.
Even though I knew it was fake, that suspension of disbelief that children have, you just disappear into that moment. And I was suddenly this scared little kid watching like this bloody sword fight. So at that age, then afterwards, you just think that's the coolest thing you've ever, So
that sparked the
the bug hit
inspiration
me.
right there.
Basically, to get back to it, yeah, I was on stage at 4, but that production was like my first, like, oh yeah, I want to be that guy. I want to be that badass, So yeah, so it was at a very young age, but to finally admit that I was going to try and pursue it, I was probably like 19 or 20, when I said, okay, I know that I have an ability that separates me and I'm going to give it a try. So that's the long answer to a simple question, but yeah.
Nah, I loved it. I loved it.
So from looking at your filmography, it's amazing how many familiar like roles that you've done, but none really popped out at me like the gorilla suit on SpongeBob. So can you tell us about that experience, and how much does that actually come up? Because even though SpongeBob is very popular, it seemed like a very obscure role.
Well, one would think, and so did I, until okay, first I'll tell you how I what happened. That I tell this story, I've told it a few times, and it's on my Instagram page. I have a whole little breakdown of what it was and how it happened. That was a job that happened by mistake. I was new I'd just come to LA from New York. I'd only been here maybe not even a year, and my agent said, look, and my agent when I came out here was great. He was sort of just getting me to meet people and meetings and just trying to get me out, he was getting me out there in a way that agents don't usually. Like, that's what managers do. They try and get you meetings and have you meet people, like what they call a go-see. So he was pitching me to the SpongeBob people, and he says, okay, Wednesday, because I'm going to get you in. They're a really tight group. It's really hard to get. They only use their people all the time. But, you're going to go in to SpongeBob on Wednesday and just make some gorilla noises. I'm like, okay, great. And so, I don't ask any more questions. And it was funny. A girl I was dating at the time was in New York, but she was out here visiting with me. And I said, okay, I got Wednesday. I just got to go, make some gorilla noises real quick at this sound. So they give me the address, and I don't know if you guys know LA, but it's on Ventura Boulevard, like just near Cahuenga, and it's in this sound stage. And I'm like, this isn't what most audio recording places look like. This isn't a studio. This is a sound stage. So I walk in the side door, and it's this big sound stage, and there's this big green screen. And I'm like, maybe they got a recording booth in the back or something. And the guy comes, oh, hey, you're here. Great. Good to meet you. So you do a lot of guerrilla work? And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. Terrific. The suit's in there. I'm like, oh, okay. And I go in the other room, and it's a freaking moldy ass gorilla suit from like 1950 something. Smells like mildew. It's from one of these costume houses. And if I'm not mistaken, and I've been looking for it ever since, I got to find like a DVD of like the complete Three Stooges, because I remember as a kid a Three Stooges episode where they're attacked by some giant gorilla, and I'm damn sure it's the same suit. Like, it was the suit was that old. It wasn't like
the same suit.
It was not a modern looking gorilla suit at all. So I'm like, okay, I'm putting on, and I'm like, oh man. And basically it was to be a gorilla stunt acrobat for the day. And I'm calling my agent. I'm like, it's a fucking suit. It's a fucking suit. And he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I just went for it. Now again, this was 20 years ago. I was a bit more spry than I am now, so, the 20, what is it? 20, but 22 years ago.
2021, because it came out in 2003.
Came out in 2003. Yeah, but it means I probably did it in 2002. Right. So yeah. So I just went for it, put on the suit. And I mean, as you see in that episode, I'm running back and forth. I'm doing somersaults. I'm jumping on, I'm tearing SpongeBob in half. And I hyperventilated into that mask and almost passed out like 2 or 3 times. Cause I'm really like, there's the main part, but then when there's another part where you see me through the porthole in the background. And that's when I'm doing, like, I'm literally was running. Like, I mean, it's a physical workout. You try doing that with a rubber mask. I mean, after the pandemic, we all remember what it's like breathing into a mask, but you do that with a rubber head. And this was literally for like that, it was a good hour and a half of just like full sprint, hyperventilating into a rubber head. Like a couple times I had to stop, breathe. Like, I wish they had an oxygen tank, but anyway, so I went for it. And my girlfriend was just laughing her ass off because she's sitting there watching me do all this because it was totally not planned, And so then I did it and I kind of forgot about it. Like, to be honest, I was not a SpongeBob watching guy, I didn't really know. And I just thought, oh, that crazy day, man, where I did that stupid thing in a gorilla suit. Right. Okay, now all the kids watching it at that age, they're little kids and they're growing up on it, Then one day, this is almost like, God, 9 years ago, I was in Holland. I was a guest lecturer at a video game college. And there's all these Dutch kids. And, they were like, young college student Dutch kids. And I'm walking down the hall and these 2 kids come running. Excuse me, are you the SpongeBob gorilla? And I was like, yeah, like I forgot that it wasn't even on my IMDb page. Like I just thought it was one of those weird things that I remember. Who would know? I didn't realize I was credited. They credited me because I just never looked at it again. And they're like, oh my God, that's the most amazing episode. So since then, the love from the SpongeBob fans is hardcore because now they're all roughly your age. And they were all deeply traumatized because I'm ripping SpongeBob in half. Like that is like an acid fever dream of an episode, where SpongeBob is being beaten up and torn apart by this gorilla, And then I jumped on the back of this donkey, I guess, a zebra. Didn't realize at the time
it was just a weird looking horse.
There was a horse, and inside the horse was D. Bradley Baker, if you know who he is.
Yeah.
Right. So D, who I know now but didn't know then, he was just some dude in the unfortunate horse costume. You know what I mean? And then I look back and I was like, oh my God, I look at the credits. I'm like, that was D in that suit. Like neither of us knew each other then. It was really funny. So the whole thing, I now love that episode. And when I look at it online, in the chat rooms, everyone's like, man, that episode fucked me up, so
it was even worse of an episode because SpongeBob was already traumatized because he was stuck inside from an accident. And
Right.
he's like, now I can go outside and gets ripped in half by a gorilla.
Right. The episode's called I Had an Accident. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, when we first was told that you was coming on the show, right? We usually do deep dives and things like that. And my manager, he told me like, hey man, this guy, he's pretty big in the gaming universe. He's like top 20 voice actors ever for gaming. So I'm like, let me see what games he was in. And I'm a huge gamer. Huge. I did not know you was in that many games. So my thing, do you prefer, is your preference voice overing video games or more animated stuff? Which one would you prefer? Like if they told you right now, you get to do a series of Puss in Boots or a whole video game, which one you gonna go for?
Well, if you're going to tell me I get a series, I'm going to take the series because the money's better. The video games I love to do, but you get it paid for your session and that's all you ever see. Right. So anytime you're on a series, that's although the money is getting less and less and less, and I'm not going to be one of those actors bitching and moaning about what I'm paid. But yeah, it's changing. It used to be you would do a series and it would run on Nickelodeon. There was a residual structure and it'd run it, you get paid. But the streaming services pay a lot less. And that's what the last strike was about for everybody, and among a lot of issues. So that money is changing. But yeah, so the money is better for a series. But to answer your question, that answer has changed over the years, because I used to say the acting, because a lot of people were ignorant of video games. Now the gaming generation is adult and they get it. But for years, people were like, "What's that like? Your voice?" I said, games are more like a movie than animation in terms of the acting style, because it's reality, and am I in close up? Is it 3/4? Are they far away? Like how you project your voice, depending where you are in the game, is all relative to distance and space. I just early on I was doing like true crime New York City, those true crime series of games, so they were like urban movies,
Yeah.
but in a
You did
video game.
Scarface.
So yeah, well, hey man, don't even we talk about that in a minute, okay? But so the acting in a video game was far more natural and realistic than animation. That's now changing, in that there's a lot more adult oriented. I don't mean necessarily, adult, like Adult Swim, dirty, pornographic. I just mean more adult themes, swear words, natural. So there's an audience for animation where it doesn't have to just be, broad cartoon acting. But it depends, you look at everything that you do and you look at the style of the show and you figure the age group it's marketed to, and then you go from there. So now it's almost a draw. But for a long time, I would say, oh yeah, I preferred. But it also depends what you're doing in the game. If you've got a really good character in the game, then you got room to. But there's guys that I just call bullet catchers. You're like guard number 2 or whatever, and it's like grenade. Like those war games. You're just screaming.
That's why I was trying to make it seem like more like, maybe I should have said something like, say you got the chance to do a Batman video game, like a new Arkham Knight that it's going to be a huge AAA.
Right. Oh, I love those. I mean, no.
Video game.
Right. And that's going to have the thing is, that's going to have what we call cutscenes, right? So now then you're going to have within the gameplay, which is a lot of action, short sentences, you're going to have moments where there's real acting, real full scenes with other actors. So yeah, now once you're in a game like that, when there's a lot of story and a lot of levels, yeah, you got a lot of room to play. So that's really fun. So it just depends what I'm being called in to do that day,
What do you think was your favorite title that you did?
Oh, well, I'm just gonna have to say hands down, would be the Scarface, because I was Tony, Tony Montana. I had more than 5,000 lines as Tony, because you play the game as Tony. It's in that GTA style. Even though it was PS2, it came out in the period that PS3 had already happened, but they knew that their fan base still only had the PS2 consoles. But that game, to me, I think they took Grand Theft Auto and did it one better in that period. That game it probably is the greatest PS2 game. The way the cars drove, the way the guns handled, like the music, everything. It was a great PS2 game. And before you get to that next question, I don't know when the remaster's coming. Everybody keeps asking me, and I'm like, believe me, I would love it. I would love it to be remastered, but that's corporate politics, Universal, and all that stuff. But who owns it? I think Microsoft owns the game because they bought part of Universal. Like, it's complicated.
Do you play some of the titles that you voice over?
I used to a lot more. But now I'm finding more stuff out, all medical stuff. I always used to get too tense and I'd sort of get headaches and I'd get motion sick. And now I found out recently I suffer from something that's called vestibular migraines. So too much like tension and eye movement gives me a migraine, and I get vertigo. So it depends on the game. I love like first person shooter type games, but games where you're flying and spinning, or if you're underground, like I remember there's a great really creepy game for serial killers called Condemned 2. Ethan Thomas, Condemned 2. And that's a whole subterranean world of like just nightmare hell, but it's a lot of underground and the camera moving, like, and I just Yeah. So I don't get, I'm not a big gamer as much just because I physically can't do it for very long. And it's probably better that I do because I get more done if I'm not like locked in. Because you, as any gamer knows, you can lose days in a game. You know, if it's a good game, you can just,
Weeks.
yeah, weeks, you know. But, you know, also, as I understood from the other side of things, um, the power of games and the power of any kind of media that people grow up watching, but especially games, especially young kids playing games, because as anybody knows, you lose a level, you go back to square one, you start again and again and again till you get clear that level. So my voice is imprinting hundreds of hours in your head in that game, in that frontal cortex. So when I would meet, you know, I'm many of the Khajiit in Skyrim, which is you know what is the franchise?
It's like an
Elder
MMO.
Elder
Yeah,
Scrolls.
yeah, Elder Scrolls. So you know, and same thing at that. That was one of the first times because I was at this video game college. I went two different times to meet with the students there. But you know, these are hardcore gamer kids who are going to be the next generation of writers and producers and programmers. And so their whole world was games, and they spent hundreds of hours. So and this isn't to make fun of anybody because I meet a ton of people on the spectrum now at these conventions. Is many of them tremendously brilliant, creative people, but they have different communication issues. Um, and a lot of these kids were very high functioning, but clearly on the spectrum in some way. And I remember, like, one girl comes out and says, "Oh, you're the Khajiit," and I turned to her. I said, "Yes, I am the Khajiit," and she started shaking. You know, she started shaking, and it was like, because it isn't about me. You know, I always say that to people. They're like, "Oh, don't you like going to conventions because you get treated like a celebrity?" I'm like, no, it's not that. I'm not being treated like a celebrity. I'm a part of somebody's happiness. I'm so happy to just be that little moment. And you're like 5 years old and you're playing, you know, Spyro the Dragon game, and I'm Sparks the Dragonfly. And that's imprinting on you at a really developmental moment. You're a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 year old kid. And, you know, the story I tell is I was at a GameStop and this guy was the manager, and I was looking at, you know, and I said, "Oh," it's right when the Reignited trilogy came out, a couple of, but maybe, I don't know, almost 8 years ago now, whatever it was. And I'm at a GameStop, and I was asking him about the business model changing from digital to disc. And he goes, "Oh, are you a big gamer?" And I said, "No, I'm an actor. I do a lot of voices in games." He goes, "Oh, what are you in?" And I looked behind him. There was a poster for Spyro, and I said, "Oh, I'm Sparks the Dragonfly." And I just watched this guy visibly like, "You're Sparks the Dragonfly?" And he started tearing up, and I was like, "Yes, I am." He goes, "That game got me through a lot of hard times, man." You know, and I was like so moved because I knew what that meant. You know, I knew that, like, who knows what his miserable childhood was. Maybe his dad is an alcoholic, violent man screaming at his mother, and he's locked in his bedroom with that little purple world just trying to be happy. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
when people come to a con and I meet with them and I suddenly do the voice, I don't care how old they are transported to that moment of their happy place. My analogy is, it's like if you found one of your beloved grandmother's purses in your mom's closet, and she passed away maybe 10 years ago, and you open that purse and you smell her perfume, and suddenly this wave of happiness comes over you, that sense memory of grandma or of whatever. And you know, that's kind of what cartoon voices or character voices, because it's a voice of your imagination. It's not reality. Yeah, people love to meet movie stars, but a voice is your creation too. It's living in your imagination because it's not a
Mhm.
real person. So
That's a great way of putting it, though.
yeah, the
Damn.
sound of that is so profound for people, especially because so much of when we're kids, that those first 20 years were sponges, you know, and we
Mhm.
remember everything. I hate to let you guys know, the older you get, you don't remember last week, last month, 10 years ago, flies like that. But those first 20 seem like 100 years, and you remember, and even when you're 80, you remember those first 20 years.
Yeah,
My
trust me,
father passed away
I'm
at
getting up there.
87, and I could ask him anything about things when he was a teenager. He remembered everything. But, my best friend when I was in college, he could care less. He didn't remember that. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just the way the mind works. But yeah, that's kind of what, that's what video games are, in a way that, sure, animation is, because little kids sit in front of that TV and watch the same SpongeBob episode 1,000 times. It's kind of like that. But video games, you're actively controlling that world and playing that world, which makes that world even more real to you. And so the voices of that world are like people that you actually met and spent not just an hour with, but hundreds of hours with.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty profound effect that
So
can
to
have.
stay on the video topic, right? Video game topic, before we get off of that, are there any titles that haven't been created into a series or a movie that you were in that you would like to see created and participate, like say maybe Spyro becoming a movie, or any video games that you have voiced in, would you like to see done as a movie? Because that's the thing nowadays. Last of Us.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like Hollywood is going.
Oh yeah, no,
video games genre.
many games are now being made into movies. They have been a long time. Like Assassin's Creed, wasn't that made into a movie?
Doom.
And I'm in a lot of the Assassin's Creed games. But is there any one specific I'd like to see made into a movie? Not that comes to mind that I could say yes. I mean, there's some that I've seen, some that I like. I mean, as an actor, unfortunately, they don't call me when that happens. That goes, to a whole other question that I'm sure we'll get to. But no, I mean, the first time I noticed it, because and then John Wick is like video game action. Or even the Matrix, not so much the first Matrix, but the Matrix, the second Matrix, a movie. Like, I remember I was with a very old friend of mine at that time, who goes to one of my other characters, King Bumi, the voice that King Bumi is actually based on, was a very old gentleman named John Barry Ryan III. And he was old New York money, and he kind of talked in this way. And we went and saw the second Matrix movie together when it first came out. And he's like, I don't understand what was with all the, they just the duplicating armies of people running around. And I said, it's video game action. And he's like, what? Again, he was from another generation. That guy grew up in the 1940s and 50s. He was an old man then. And I said, yeah, I said, movies are now reflecting the repetitive violence and almost robot-like action in games. Like, it's not just one, it's just like replicating armies of like thousands of coming at you like ants or something, And I said, yeah, that's often what video games is. Oh, because he'd never seen a video game, so he didn't know. That was one of the first times I really noticed like an action in a movie felt more like a video game than a film. And again, we're so much later than that now. The action looks so much better. But if you go back and look at that second like the first Matrix was revolutionary when everybody saw that for the first time.
Yeah, that was insane.
But I remember like the action in the second one almost became too much. Like, it went too far and it just kind of washed over you, where for me anyway, I often, when there's too much CGI, I just feel like I'm drowning in it now, and I kind of I check out of the movie. I'm no longer immersed in it. Like, I like movies where they do a little bit here and there, but when it's just like 45 minutes of straight CGI violence, I just check out. And I remember that one, I was disappointed at that time. I was like, it's just too much. Like, they need to do a little less, but that's another discussion. Anyway. So yeah, but the answer, to double back around, no. Is there a video game? Yeah, I can't think of one that I was like, oh yeah, that'll make a great movie. Because pretty much the ones that are great, they do it.
So speaking of King Bumi and adaptations, you, of course, voiced King Bumi. And have you had a chance to see the live action adaptation? And if you have, what did you think of their interpretation of him.
Well, to be honest, I haven't seen it. So that lets me off the hook. I've been getting a lot of feedback from fans. And it's a tricky, it goes back to a lot of the stuff we were talking about. Every generation has their version of something. And there's a big difference, as I was just saying, between animation and live action, and how it affects the viewer and how it affects kids. You know, the same thing as when they made this sort of live action animatronic, whatever you want to call it, CGI'd Lion King. Whole generation of kids grew up on that cartoon, that animated film. Like, why make a live action movie of it, you say? Well, there's a whole new generation of 3, 4, 5, 6, 8-year-olds that maybe didn't see the cartoon, or maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Now their version's going to be that live action version, and for them it's just as valid. So
Yeah.
I never want to trash somebody's experience of something. I don't know a lot about the live action series. Unfortunately, they didn't call me to do Bumi. And when I heard that, I was really, really disappointed. Not because, you know, look, I'm not a live action movie star. I was disappointed specifically, yes, for myself as an actor in my career, blah, 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 wah, wah, wah. But I was disappointed because Bumi, for me, is a very specific creation. That voice was very specific. It was based on someone, you know, and that voice is so a part of who Bumi is. It's so a part of how he's kind of scary when it starts in Avatar. You don't know, is he dangerous, King Bumi? Is he then we realize he's crazy and fun and lovable, but initially there's a kind of, who are you, young bald one? There's this kind of scary. And I've talked about this many times. There's a wonderful podcast that Dante Bosco and Janet Varney do, the Last Airbender pod, and it's the official Avatar podcast. And we did a whole episode on Bumi and how I created him, or where the voice came from. But I'll repeat some of it, which was my friend John Berry Ryan. As I said, when I had the audition, I don't believe there was art for Bumi, but there was just a descriptor and it kind of Mad King, whatever. Aristocratic voice. That was the only word. We don't even have that word in America anymore. The aristocracy, as it were, is a 19th, 20th century concept. Old moneyed, rich families, FDR spoke in a certain kind of way. And all those rich people on the East Coast all went to the same sort of schools. And they all had this New York aristocratic way of talking in another generation. It's not British at all. It was, this New York. And John came from a generation of very wealthy people in New York. And, he used to go sailing with JFK. Okay, that's who John was. He was one of those. And, but he was a man of the theater as well. And he smoked Camel Unfiltered, and he was always, just this wonderful character. And so when I heard aristocratic, I sort of went to John Ryan's voice. And then I sort of made him a little higher and a little crazier, And so Bumi kind of came from that. From what I've gathered by looking just at pictures and whatever, the live action series made a very specific decision to be Asian or East, which I get. It is in an anime style. The kids are sort of Asian looking in the cartoon, but I believe within that universe, certain characters are timeless. They don't have to be from anywhere. Bumi is one of them. His drawing doesn't look particularly Asian. They cast a guy from the picture I saw who's he's American, but he's of Indian descent. And so I understand the sort of politics of why it was cast a certain way. They don't usually call the voice actor who created a role anyway for a live action thing. They always want to cast who they perceive as a star and blah, blah, blah. But again, I haven't seen the show, so I'm not going to critique the quality of it. But what I will say is I know the original creators walked away from the live action show. There must be a reason for that. So when I heard that, I was very disappointed because I love those guys and I love the series so dearly that I was hoping the live action would really just reflect their world. Obviously, the live action guys deviated from that. I don't know in what way. I know Game of Thrones deviated from those books, except that they had his cooperation all the way through the series. And he says the books are one thing, the series is another. And live action, sometimes you, for the sake of time, you have to condense things. So I get it. There's a difference. You can't just replicate a cartoon in live action all the time.
Yeah.
But it's too bad because I think Bumi's voice is such a huge part of his mystery and who he is. And it made him kind of timeless. And it's also unusual to see someone who talks in that way be suddenly a muscular, ripped badass who can fight. That was the other funny thing about it, which is his voice is kind of totally counter to his physique and the fact that he can fight. You know, if he's just another Asian older guy who can do martial arts, well, we've seen that. You know what I mean? So again, I'm not diminishing that actor or his performance because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen what they've done with it, but the fans are not happy from the feedback I've been getting online. But again, maybe those are older fans complaining to me. Maybe a 10-year-old kid's
as somebody who's an older fan myself, I will say that the live action is a lot better than the One Piece live action that they made. And the one critique I will have about the new live action Airbender is Bumi, because it's like when you get to Bumi's part, like even the CGI, the way, you know, when he encounters Aang in the cartoon, he throws a few rocks at him, like the trial that he gives him in the beginning, like that whole scene doesn't really do it for live action like the way it does it for animation. So, and then the prosthetics that they put on them, it's like you can tell like the way they try to make it look was like a little off to me. But
I would say,
and the fact that they are going to go, my other thing is like, well, I could never have the washboard abs at my age that Bumi had, but that guy doesn't have them either. So I was like, damn, I could have been Bumi quite easily. And you know what I mean? Like, but again, you don't have to make me look, because now, you know, there's something we call blackface or brown face, as they say. You know, you do, you know, when I was growing up, Peter Sellers did a movie called The Party, which is incredible, where he's playing an Indian character, and he's not making fun. If you've ever seen Peter Sellers in The Party, it's genius. And he's brilliant in it, and his character is actually the purest of heart and the most beautiful person in that whole film of idiots. But he's a klutz. It's a slapstick. It's a wonderful film. And he's incredible because Peter Sellers, and if you don't know who Peter Sellers, you look him up, he was a genius. He was of the Pink Panther movies and all that. Peter Sellers was just, he was like a Mozart of comedy and acting, and he was incredible. But nowadays, that is not politically allowed, and I understand and respect all the reasons why. But, so, yeah, now I could not portray an Indian character. Alec Guinness did it for years. That was the world we were in. I get why there's plenty of wonderful Indian actors. My feeling is, based on the cartoon, Bumi does not need to be, even though Bumi does sound like an Indian name, and it is in an East Indian world, as I said, he's kind of a magical figure. So I think Bumi is a kind of timeless, universalist character that is in that world, that, like any wizard, you know, and he's a wizard in his way, you know, just like Gandalf is kind of from that world, but you know, we think of Gandalf as otherworldly, and I think Bumi has that same vibe. So I don't feel it had to be an Indian actor, but I understand if that's the whole flavor of the show, then that's how they cast, you know. But yeah, I'm disappointed because I wish I could have given Bumi's voice the actual character on camera, and I am physically capable of playing that, and I am an on-camera actor, and whatever you want to say.
Speaking about on-camera actors, right? You played in a franchise that had succeeded over billions upon billions of dollars, Transformers as Landslide. Do you feel like that was one of the characters, or was it another that elevated your career to maybe the point it's at now? What was that character that really put you on that pedestal?
You know what's funny? I don't think I've been in huge projects and I've played huge characters, but to be honest, I've never really had the one character that suddenly put me on the map. It was kind of one after another. The way I talk about myself is like, I'm very well known in the business for what I do, the kind of way a famous session guitarist is known in the music world. Certain people land that one part that kind of puts them into another stratosphere. In a way, Bumi is that a little bit, because the fans have now grown up, and that show has now kind of turned into a wonderful almost religion, the same way Star Wars, Lord of the Rings,
Definitely has.
Avatar: The Last Airbender will live forever. Now because it's also so pure, and the way it's animated is kind of timeless, and there's only 3 seasons. It's kind of perfect. And so I think generation after generation after generation will always love and grow up. You're not gonna look back at it and go, that looks really dated. So in that sense, Boomy was kind of, I mean, Sideswipe was a wonderful thing to do. The Transformers was a big kind of breakthrough for me. But again, it didn't, I was also both train engineers in the Polar Express. A whole generation of kids watched that over and over and over. It's on every Christmas. So I've done a lot of things. People are like, oh, you're that, but it's never like Andre is but like, I'm dear friends with Fred Tatasciore. Fred Tatasciore and he's the Hulk. Boom, you're the Hulk. If I could just land Magneto, boom. It's also how significant is the character in the big franchise. You know what I mean? So if I'm Optimus Prime, that's a whole other story other than Sideswipe. So
how about that for a question? With X-Men 97 premiering tomorrow, right? Would you like to work with Marvel in the anime division? And so, what character would you want?
Well, I have. I would have loved to have been a part of that series. I read for it. They didn't give it to me. But no, I've been in I've been in a bunch of the X-Men games.
Video games, right?
I played Archangel. I played Igor Drenkov in Avengers Assemble, the cartoon.
Oh, yes, right. I did do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's any number of characters. I was at one point I was Red Skull, then I wasn't. So yeah, I've done them. I'm again, as you see from my resume, I'll take whatever you throw at me. There's never one character like, oh, that's the one I wish. I mean, sometimes there's one I wish I had. There's certain things I read for where I know it's going to be huge, and there's stuff that I didn't get that I really was disappointed. I won't go into I didn't get it and this guy got it. So yeah, there are a couple of things, but sometimes they're new. It's like when I read them on the page, I know this is great and I want to do it. It's never like, yeah, I'm such a fan of this. I mean, look, when Tony Montana came around, I wanted that, and I wanted that bad. And I also knew I had a certain I knew I had a way into the character that separated me from the field too, in terms of my understanding of the voice. So yeah, that was one. When that came around, I was like, I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure I get this. And part of it was that's a character I actually booked twice. Initially, it was when games start, they usually start as a demo sometimes. So they do a short version. And so there was a demo of it, and it came in and there were all these video game lines, but none of the audition had the original lines from the movie. And I said, that's not right. Like, we want say hello to my little friend. We want to hear Tony, man. We know those lines. We want to hear
that Tony.
We've seen that movie 100 times. We know every line of that film, And so I said to again, this was before I had the internet. I said to my agent, I came in the morning, I said, let me go home. I'm going to come in at the end of the day. I'm going to record. So I went home. I got the DVD off my shelf, and I wrote down Tony's greatest hits, because you couldn't go on YouTube yet and just pull them, So I went home and I did my homework, and then I went in and I matched them, one after another, hey, Chichi, get the yayo, the piece of shit up there. I never liked him. I never trusted him.
Crazy how much you sound like Al Pacino.
So, all that stuff, hey, I was certainly kidding, all that stuff. So I gave you Tony's greatest hits, and then I read the video game lines. So I made up my own audition, and I just went for it. I talked in character as Tony first. Okay, I'm gonna do some lines for you people. Okay, you piece of chick, get out of here. Okay, here I go. And so I just went for it. So I sent in this crazy audition, but I also gave them the lines that everybody had in their subconscious. And so I booked the demo, and then 6 months went by, 8 months went by, and then it came around again with a new creative team. The guy who wrote the movie Blow wrote the video game. And so now the audition came back again. And I was like, I already booked this once. Why are they sending out this audition twice? So I basically took my old audition and I added on some of the new lines that came with the new audition, and I sent it in again, and I booked it again. So, and that was a big deal because they audition. I mean, I hear many numbers, 2,000, 6,000 different people. I mean,
man.
everybody in the world auditioned for that game. And so I was very proud of booking that, and I was a huge fan of that film, as so many people were already, and many actors, everybody I knew, everybody in New York. I worked with Al Pacino, and so I'm in a film called Looking for Richard that he did about Shakespeare. So I've spent time with Al, a lot of time with Al, and I know, and I witnessed garbage men running up to Al and doing Tony Montana. You know what I mean? That's the voice. People think, oh, Michael Corleone or whatever, but Tony Montana is the one that every garbage man, every dude on the street, everybody, every sort of little man who has big ambitions loves their Tony Montana. And so, but I also had an understanding of Al's voice, just as Al. So that's underneath the other thing, which becomes Tony Montana. It's an Italian guy from the Bronx doing a Cuban accent is what Tony Montana. People always say, oh, well, it's not really a good Cuban accent. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. It's not, but that's not the point. You know what I mean? I always say, if you want to play accent police and ruin something for yourself, you can do that. It may not be the greatest Cuban accent ever put to film, but it is one of the most indelible characters anybody has ever seen. Tony Montana, I always say, is neither Italian or Cuban. It's Tony fucking Montana. Okay, deal with it. So that it's just such an amazing portrayal, an amazing script, and an amazing moment in cinema that it's just this incredible thing. And again, that was a movie way ahead of its time too.
Definitely was.
If you've gone and seen Narcos, I don't know if you've watched that series.
I've seen Narcos.
But season 1 and 2 gives you the history of the war on drugs. And the first decade, Reagan was looking for communists in the jungle like an idiot. You know what I mean? They were bringing cocaine in the hubcaps of trucks like across the border for unchecked for a decade before the U.S. government got hip to the drug trade. So when Oliver Stone, who wrote that script, started, wrote that scene where the guy gets his head cut off with a chainsaw, the critics were gone from Scarface when it first came out. That movie did not do well in the theaters initially, and the critics panned it initially, but it's such, it just kept going and going and going. But yeah, they were portraying, it's almost got a two-dimensional, almost cartoon vibe to it in a way, but they were writing about a world yet that America was not aware of. So people kind of went, whoa, they didn't get it. They just thought it was excessive cartoon violence, too much. That's not real. And it's like, no, actually it is very real. And that is what's happening right now in Miami and the drug trade. You guys just aren't aware of it, so, but yeah. So if you ask, yeah, that was a part that came out that I desperately wanted. And I was very proud that I landed and very proud to sort of carry that character on.
So let's touch upon something you just said. You were a big fan of Scarface, and you were really excited when you got it. Throughout your career, was there any other, I guess, role that you were a fan of, and when you booked it, you were really excited that you were able to play it, or did you just see it as work? Or on the flip side, did you just see a role as work and then afterwards you became a fan of it?
Well, it depends. When I say this is just work for me, uh, uh, my work, fortunately, most of the time for me is play, and I'm very lucky to get to have fun in pretty much the majority of what I do. Work for me is when I have to read like a medical video for some medication for doctors. That's work. You know what I mean? Like I do a lot of different kinds of VO. Certain things are just so dry and so boring. That's hard work. You're like, well, lysoger's ferricin, could cause retardation and limb loss. Like whatever. Like you're reading all that, awful. Um, but so most of the time it's never just work. But to put it another way, well, I think you had a two-part question. The other one, other than Tony Montana, which would be the number one answer to that question, probably would have been when I was in the original Clone Wars series. I was the first generation of Star Wars fans. I grew up, I saw I was 11 years old when the first Star Wars movie came out. And at that point, nobody had ever seen anything like that. And so we all, wanted to have those clone trooper guns and lightsabers and all of it, So I was in the right age for that. So to suddenly, as an adult, get to be the voice of all the ARC troopers, battle droids, clone troopers, Captain Typho, Captain Fordo, I mean, it was a thrill. Commander Cody. I did all the Knights of the Old. I did a couple of the Knights of the Old Republic games, 1 and 2, plus the original micro series. So yeah, that was a tremendous thrill and an honor. To be honest, when I first booked Sideswipe, I didn't know anything about Transformers. I was too old. I didn't grow up on that cartoon. I was already sort of away from my television chasing girls at that point. So I was not, it wasn't that I didn't like Transformers. I just didn't know of that world well at all. So when I booked Sideswipe and did it, and it was, really fun working with Michael Bay and the whole, and then I did the game. I'm sorry, I did the ride at Universal Studios as well. I'm the voice of Sideswipe in that. Not until I started going to the conventions, to be honest, and meeting the Transformers community was I really suddenly moved and realized how profound this universe is, because the cartoon didn't have it was the comic book creators that actually filled out the philosophy and the ethos and the whole world and the themes of what Transformers was really about. The initial TV cartoon, I'm not a total student of it, but I think Transformers actually got more profound later on in its way. And so I started learning from the fans about it, and then I looked into it more. And then, I then became a Transformers fan after having done the work. So that kind of answers your question, but it never felt like just work. It's always play, for me. Most of the time, if I'm really lucky, it's play and not too much work.
Are there any lines from any one of the characters that you have done that resonates with you in, real life or personally?
Let's see. There's a lot of Tony lines, but they resonate with me personally in different situations. Like if I'm stuck in traffic, you fucking cockroach, but no, I would say one of my favorite Bumi lines, which is kind of a little throwaway line, is open your brain to the possibilities. You know what I mean? Like that's very simple. It's a very simple little thing. And in the context of the scene, he just kind of says it, but it's a pretty heavy concept, open your brain to the possibilities, don't look at something this way. There's a million ways to look at anyone. If you can step outside of yourself and try and look at a problem or a conflict, or maybe a person that you're having a problem with, open your brain to the possibilities. There's many different ways to attack a look at or approach a different a given situation. And so that's one of the ones I always kind of, I always kind of, yeah, Boomy's right. Open your brain to the possibilities.
All right, now we talk so much about your characters and the characters you portrayed, the voices you done. Tell us a little about yourself. What's something that the people don't know about Andre? What's one of your hobbies? You know, because we all got, you know, little see like me, I ain't gonna lie, I collect nothing but Funko Pops. People will never tell, but I got thousands of them upstairs. So what's a hobby that people might not know about you?
Well, the other half of what I do, well, one, photography is a hobby of mine. I've always loved taking pictures. My sister, when I was growing up, and still is a wonderful artist. She can draw. She had the gift in her hands of drawing. I can't even draw an accurate stick figure. There's a lot of things I have the talent for. I have no gift for physical drawing, but I do have a very good eye for photography, and I was taking pictures pretty much from the age of like, God, 13. I had bought my first camera with paper route money. And yeah, and I've always, and I love to take portraits in a way. I mean, I like to take pictures of everything, but I really love portraits and people's faces and what a good portrait can tell you about the inner life of somebody if you capture them. And I started doing it years ago in New York. And I never learned enough of the technical side of photography. I was just a good photographer, but I was not, because, you know, there's a lot of technical know-how in terms of lenses and apertures and settings and back in the day, film speeds, that's different. But my friends would come to me with like headshots, and I was like, that's not you. Doesn't look like it's a nice picture, but I don't know who that is. And so I would take headshots for my friends because I knew how they were beautiful to me. And I wanted to see that coming back at me in the portrait. So that was always what I was able to get my friends, just to sort of be themselves and capture that thing that makes them special, because I knew them. Then their agents would go, "Oh, would you do some of my other clients?" And then I was like, "Oh my God, now I have to take a picture of somebody I don't know and see if I can make that." And then I would spend a day with somebody, and I sort of got good at it. So that's photography is one of my hobbies. And then the other, you know, passion more than a hobby is music. You know, I'm a songwriter, and have been for a long, long time. I mean, kind of acting and songwriting almost kind of went hand in hand in a way for me
Yeah,
early on.
Kennedy was actually telling me a little about your music before the
which
interview. He
leads
actually
which leads
listened.
into my next question. You released an album in 2016, Love Songs and Other Problems.
Yeah.
How big of an impact has music been in your life? And when did you decide to, I guess, pursue music and create it? And who are your influences?
Well, what happened was, as I said, my father was a theater professor. My mother was a music teacher. So I was always in a house of music, and my father loved music too. He was a theater person. So I grew up with all the sort of Broadway show music. My father was a big opera lover. So I had opera, classical music. Um, and then I spent a lot of my time with his grad students as a kid.
Mm.
You know, everybody had an older brother or something that turned them on to the Beatles or whatever. I had my father's. So my musical tastes were actually 10 years older than me, which is kind of funny. So my big influence, I grew up in, you know, in the sort of singer-songwritery period of, you know, pop music in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, and rock was very melodic, very lyric oriented before the influence of rap came in, and different ways of using words kind of shaped things. So, yeah, I mean, I grew up loving, you know, all that. All again, I'm of an age where I really should have 80s tastes, but I have 70s, 60s tastes, because my dad's grad students were like my best buddies, and I would hang out with them, and they were listening to Joni Mitchell, the Beatles, CSNY, Paul Simon, Simon and Garfunkel,
I was
James
about to
Taylor.
say, it sounds
Yeah.
very Simon and Garfunkel.
And
My favorite.
Cat Stevens is a huge influence. I always loved, I mean, I loved Cat Stevens. And if you've ever seen the movie Harold and Maude,
Yes.
The whole soundtrack is Cat Stevens, and I, you know, so yeah, he was a profound influence and a giant of that period. And then the way the world became racist when he converted to the Muslim faith, people, you know, were calling him the Ayatollah Khomeini and burning his records. Welcome to America. But so yeah, I was influenced by all of those. So as a teenager, I thought I was a late bloomer. I started teaching myself guitar at about the age of 18. And as soon as I sort of started playing guitar, then I always wrote, and I wrote poetry and then I started, you know, writing songs. And when I first moved back to New York at about the age of 19 or 20, I was pursuing a career as an actor, taking acting classes and sort of, you know, getting more comfortable and thinking of the world. I was also thinking of the world of a professional actor. I wasn't doing it professionally yet, but I was looking at that world. I also began playing in the open mics in the last gasp of kind of what was the folk scene in the Village at that period on McDougal Street. But when I was coming up, you know, so you would play an open mic on a Monday, then they'd see that you were a little bit better than everybody else, and then they'd give you like a Wednesday night. You didn't get a weekend slot that you'd play in the middle of the week, and then maybe you'd be one of three like on a Friday or whatever. You know, I mean, it's every business has its way. But when I was coming up as a songwriter, the other trick was, and I've said this before in interviews, I was doing both because I have an ability to change my voice and portray a character. So oftentimes I would write a song from the perspective of somebody else. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's a character, and sometimes I would sing the song in kind of the voice of a character in a way. And but the way it works when you're playing in a coffee house and there's three people on the bill that night, well, maybe the guy who's playing after you has a better list. So all his family and friends, and he's got 30 people there in this coffee house that seats 60. You get up there, they're all talking over your ass because they don't hang out much. Oh my God, it's so good to see you, blah, blah, blah. They're talking over you while you're trying to like pour your singer-songwriter or your heart out. So I quickly learned how to command the room because I had stage experience, and I would suddenly just lean in and go, this is a song I wrote when I was in Northern England. I'd like to share with you now. And suddenly, all of a sudden, they'd all get quiet. Ooh, you know what I mean? So I would use different voices or characters to sort of grab the attention of the room, and I learned how to get it. So I was using my chops as an actor to get my music heard in a way. But ultimately, the music business, I was coming up in the heart of grunge as a writer, as a performer. And the age of this sort of male singer-songwriter was over. The only women that were breaking out in that period were female. The sort of solo act songwriter performer was a female thing. Tracy Chapman, Sinead O'Connor, Sarah McLachlan, they were all, it was all a female thing. Men had to have a band. You know, they had to be in Nirvana. They had to be, you know, so, and metal was dying, grunge was coming in, and I didn't want to play in rock clubs. I didn't want a band. I played with other musicians, but yeah, so I slowly realized I kind of had to do one or the other. It's hard to start two careers at once. So I put music on the back burner, even though it was a passion and it was the other half of me in a way. I pursued acting, and I said, if I got to get acting is a quicker way to an income for me. But I kept writing and I kept recording, and I had a friend of mine who was a guitarist that played with me. He slowly became a better and better producer engineer. So I'd get a bunch of songs together. I'd record them with David just for the love of it, just for me. So I had this backlog of stuff. So finally, a lot of the stuff that's on that album, Love Songs and Other Problems, which is on Spotify, which you can find on my website and other things. Some of them were recorded a long time ago. Some of them were recorded more recently. So it's a collection, but there's a through line in it that you really can't tell what period they're from. So some of it is very folky. Some of it is more rock. Some of it is, it depends. And often I also like songs to be kind of like each one's a different little movie. Each one's its own little universe you walk into. So yeah, they're kind of like stories with characters, and yeah. So I still do it. I still play. I still write. But Los Angeles is different than New York. I don't play out in the clubs as much here, or haven't really. But I used to play a lot with other musicians in New York. But I'm still writing and still recording. So yeah.
My favorite song when I listen to it is Claudine, because it has
Oh,
that Egyptian sounding intro.
oh, well, thank you so much for giving it a listen. Yeah, Claudine is a true story. I met Claudine, but that's the story of the kind of woman that, like, it's everything you ever wanted, and then it slips away. It doesn't,
Mhm.
and it's somebody I met, and yeah. So Claudine is actually a real person, and that's kind of the story of a kind of true love affair that never quite got off the ground.
Yeah,
But
there are so many songs that, like you said, the musicality catches you off guard, because that one had like the Egyptian intro. I forget which one it was. It had like kind of an Italian feel.
So much more than I can say. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that one too. And that was based on that's one of those songs that's about um, breaking somebody else's heart. It's bad enough to write a song about when your own heart is broken, but when this person is beautiful and you do love them, it's just not that other thing.
Is
And that sort of, the moment that song is about was sort of evoking a trip through Italy that the two of us took together. So I'm glad you could hear that in the music.
it's just an album that really keeps you on your toes, and it makes you want to
Thank you so
listen.
much. Yeah. There's another one on there that's really, really dark called Unlucky that I think you'd like too.
Oh,
Yeah.
I listened to that on the website, and when you said that, and then I listened to it on the album, and when you said that you evoke other voices, it really comes clear in the recording, because when you talk as the grandma, you really
You just
change your
unlucky,
voice.
baby.
Yeah. I really enjoy that.
Well, that yeah, I mean, it's hard to talk about songs that nobody here has the benefit of hearing, but that was a song. I read a book about the early life of Charles Manson,
Mm.
and the old idea, we say, are serial killers born or are they made? And the character in my song is a combination of the two. But I had read this book on Manson's life, and Manson would always say, "I'm what you made me. The system made me. I grew up in your prisons." He was a sociopath from birth, because the second, like, Helter Skelter is an amazing book, but there was a book this guy went and found at Manson's. He found it, like, what his childhood was like before he was even incarcerated. As a little kid, as like an 8-year-old, he got a bunch of different little girls to beat up this other kid that he didn't like. Okay. So he was that little monster from birth. But so my theory so I was sort of writing a song from the song is really about the idea that neglect is a form of abuse.
Mm.
And the idea that, like, this guy, this character has this childhood where everyone just kind of says, like, well, life sucks, you're just unlucky, there's nothing you can do about it, it's preordained, it's pre-written, you're just unlucky. And so yeah, the song, the music around the song is dark, but at the end of the song, I mean, the character just lights a match and burns up his whole family.
Holy
Yeah, you look up my thing, you'll like that song. It's dark. It's a
Yeah.
very dark tune.
It's called
But
Unlucky.
yeah, it's called Unlucky, and his grandma says, "Oh, you just unlucky, baby."
It has kind of like
That's what you are. Like, it's sort of like you're condemned. You can never, you're just
Yeah.
unlucky, and that's your lot in
Well,
life.
has
we
kind of like a
do.
Cajun sound to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have too much time
Yeah.
left. So I do want to ask you, do you have any upcoming projects or conventions that you're able to talk about?
Projects. I have one that's in the anime world that still hasn't been sold, which is called Road of Vengeance. And if you just look up Road of Vengeance, they'll have the teaser of the first episode. We've recorded one season of it, and I'm the main villain in that, and it's beautifully, beautifully animated, and that's a really
What's the
cool
name
one.
of the villain?
Weehan.
Mm.
Weehan, and he's it's Asian, but Weehan does not have an Asian accent. But So yeah, Road of Vengeance still has not yet been sold. I know there's more My Adventures with Superman. I play Monsieur Malin
Love
in
it.
which was wonderful. I love that series. I love the
Me
writing of
too.
that character, and that one.
Oh, your
Yeah,
boy
so
Michael Yurchek is in that one.
and
In the
Michael's
second
in that.
season.
Michael thought, yeah, I saw your interview with Michael. Right, they announced him and then they pulled him because he was supposed to be in season 1, and then I think they bumped it to season 2. So the cat's out of the bag because normally we don't talk about stuff that hasn't aired yet. But yeah, Monsieur Malin, I believe there's more coming up of Monsieur Malin. I can safely say that in My Adventures with Superman, and that has a kind of anime style to it, which is
Yeah, I
really
love it.
great.
It's one of my favorite new shows.
There's another series. Sausage Party. The movie is now a TV
Part 2?
series.
Oh, they
No, no,
making it a
no.
series?
There's an animated TV series, and that's due to come out soon. And they've announced that me and Gray Delisle, a bunch of other people are in that.
Oh, I gotta see that.
Yeah,
Sausage
Sausage
Party
Party. I
was
did
a
a bunch
guilty
of different.
pleasure of mine
I
to
did a
watch.
bunch of different voices in Sausage Party. That's going to be a lot of fun. So I got that coming up. Appearance wise, I'm going to be this coming. I mean, I don't know when you're going to air this. I will have already been and gone probably, but Anime Las Vegas. This coming weekend, I'll be. I'll
Oh
be
yeah,
there.
we'll probably air this like the middle of April.
Oh, well, that'd be long gone. All these appearances are gone. But anyway, so I will have been at Anime Las Vegas, WonderCon. Me and my pal Gray Delisle, we're going to be at WonderCon. Toy Temple has a table at WonderCon. We're going to be signing Funkos there. And then the next day we're going to be down at Ninja Exchange in Carlsbad signing more Funko Pops. So yeah, I've got like those 4 appearances. But then come spring, I think there's more stuff coming up, but I don't know what it is yet. But if everybody keeps their eye on my Instagram page, I post everything I'm going to be doing and have done. So yeah, I'm excited about that. But there in the game world, I can never talk about the stuff I've done. But if you're fans of any of the stuff that you've seen me in recently, there's always more of it coming. If that's a clue for you. Let me see what else. There's another one. I forgot if it's been announced or not. The series has been announced, but have I been announced? I won't say what I do, but keep an eye. I've heard good things about a series called Dead Boy Detectives. If you look up Dead Boy Detectives, that should be coming out soon. What else is there? Any?
Well, you pretty busy.
Well, it appears like I am, but some of these things I did a long time ago and they're still not out. You know what I mean? Like I would love them to get released so I can go, oh, I'm in this, I'm in this, I'm in this, but there's a bunch of stuff I've done. But you know, the lag time is a couple of years sometimes. So one of the stories I've told often on different podcasts, but your audience is different than one's, is a sort of philosophy, a credo. You say, is there a line by any of my characters that resonates with me? Well, this is a line that was given to me, something said to me by a comedian named Lewis Black. I don't know if you know who Lewis Black is, but wonderful political commentator and kind of crazy and, you know, always angry, just raging at the world. And I ran into Lewis Black on the street in New York about 10 years ago or more. And I walked up to him and I said, excuse me, Mr. Black, I love what you do. I love your political voice. I just wanted to just thank you so much. And I shook his hand. Oh, thank you very much. And I said, my name's Andre. I'm an actor. And he's like, oh, thank you. Thanks a lot. You know, and he starts walking into traffic and he turns and he stops and he goes, you're an actor, huh? Good luck with the bullshit. And he walks off into traffic. And I went, oh my God, the Buddha has spoken, because I understood what good luck with the bullshit meant. I immediately called my buddy Earl, who's an actor, and I said, this is what Lewis Black just said, because I had been working long enough to understand what that meant. And especially as an actor, it's true, but it's true in any business that you're in, any world that you're in. And it circles back around to my father's career. He was a wonderful teacher. He was not good with the bullshit. And I always say, if you're lucky, if you're severely lucky, you know, 10% of the time, maybe if you're lucky, you'll get to do what you love to do and get paid for it. The other 90% is how you navigate the bullshit, and Hollywood is full of it. Everybody's really nice. You're going to have this great meeting and, they're going to, oh, you're fabulous. I'll definitely send you out. They never call, you go on that job interview in any business and you have this great meeting. Everything goes great. Well, maybe the boss gave it to his daughter, or maybe, you look like the guy that broke that woman's heart in high school. Like, whatever it is, all you can do is be the best version of you the day you show up for that meeting, that audition, that whatever, and then you got to let it go. It's hard to, but the bullshit and how you navigate it is how you succeed. I know plenty of talented people. I gave up on the music business at a certain point because I didn't like the bullshit of clubs, of New York clubs. It was a dirty, filthy, nasty kind of, there was, the club world is a little bit, I'm very good friends. And I did his podcast, my friend, JJ French of Twisted Sister. And they slogged around in Long Island for 10, Twisted Sister went a long, 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 long time before they were ever signed and made it as a metal band. And, John is 10 years older than me, but his stories of clubs and the road and the world, I didn't have a band. I was just little old me with a guitar. And I just wasn't great at navigating that world and blowing my own horn. And a lot of it was how you put up with that. And so I targeted, acting. But yeah, I always say that, so good luck with the bullshit. That's what you have to face a lot of the time. And that's not to be negative. That's just to be aware and not personalize that bullshit, because otherwise you're going to have a bad attitude. You're going to let it get you down, and you're going to show up for a meeting with a chip on your shoulder, and that's not going to get you anywhere. So, all you can be is confident in what it is you have to offer, and find somebody that makes you confident in what you do. It's hard when you're young and you want to be an artist, or you want to be an actor, or you want to be a musician, you know what I mean? And maybe you have a negative parent or a negative older sibling or someone like, keep doing what it is you do. That's why, thank you so much. It means a lot to me that you listen to my music. I put it out there. I mean, the record's out there. I did a short film that I directed and edited myself. It's kind of a relief in a way that there's almost no way to make money as a musician. You can make money as a musician performing live, but recording, I just do that because I love it. And it takes the pressure off. I'm just doing it so that it's out there. I can put that record out, and someone says, what do you do? I can say, oh, here's my CD. Take a listen, and when they hear it, they're like, oh my God, you're very good. It's like, yes, I am. But there's absolutely, this is a different world now. It's hard for the kind of music I love to do. Not that people aren't doing it, but there's an arc to the way, and an age to the way the music business works. And, I sort of maybe missed that launching platform, but that doesn't negate my ability to still make that music that makes me happy. And so, that's always is like, one, good luck with the bullshit. And the other two is just keep doing what it is you love to do. I love what you guys do. I've looked at a couple of your podcasts.
Thank you so much. We trying to work, man.
You've created your own world, talking about, the passions that you have, and that's a really wonderful thing, because your joy and your love of what it is you do reflects out, it puts that out there in the world for other people to take that on. And it's really nice. It's nice to see.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining this podcast. We had a great conversation. Let people know where they can find you at on social media, and then also where to find some of your music.
Absolutely. So please, and I guess you guys will probably post it. At André Sogliuzzo Instagram. I'm at TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. The Instagram's probably the best one. And the reason I say it is, please follow me, because I love coming to the conventions to meet everybody. And the more followers you have on Instagram, that's the other thing. I was a late bloomer. I just thought nobody cares what I had for lunch. Well, I didn't realize it's a big part, if they're going to put me at that table, they want to know that my appearance is going to go out on blast to 30,000 people or whatever. So the more followers I have, the more chance I get to sort of meet the fans who are passionate about the work that we do. Because it really is, as I said early in this interview, it's wonderful to be a part of somebody's happiness, and I really thank you guys for contacting me, and I thank all the fans for the feedback that I've gotten, and now that they've sort of grown up to an age where they can show up and say hello to me, or they can email me and ask me questions and tell me about how my work has sort of been a part of their happiness. It's a really, really nice feeling. It makes what I do is an income and a living, but it makes me very happy to know that maybe some small part of what I did made someone else happy. It's a really great thing. So thank everybody so much.
Definitely.
So yeah,
Thank
Instagram,
you.
Facebook at André Sogliuzzo, and my music is on Spotify, as well as if you go to my website, I also have it there, andresogliuzzo.com. They will have the correct spelling of my name and my Instagram and everything when you click on the link to this particular podcast today.
Definitely,
So,
heroes.
again.
All links will be in the description below. Thank y'all so much for tuning in.
Absolutely.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, check out my boy Kennedy Foreman as well. Thank you for co-hosting with me. Andre, thank you so much for coming through. And heroes, like I said, man, we got more interviews on the way. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, we out of here.
Sing it with me, pretty Cali, pretty Cali.